You can conceal a lot of sins, of brewing sins, under this patina of flaming, bitter hoppiness. Personally, I'm done with hops. Been through the hop thing and out the other side, you know. I've finished. I'm from the Pacific Northwest. That's kind of where it started, because that's where hops come from. Spread like a plague. Also, super hoppy beers and high alcohol beers go together. I don't want like an 8% beer. I can't handle that anymore. I could never handle it. Now I'm honest with myself. I'm going to try the Nitro Red Irish Ale. I'm thinking that's probably going to be similar to a Kilkenny's or a Smithwick's or one of those that is my safest bet to not just get blown out by hop flavors. Beautiful, thank you. Now this is going to make a mess with my facial hair. Yeah, I think I made the right choice. Dodge is a pretty complicated, well-rounded guy. He grew up on a farm in Iowa. He went off to Canada and ended up becoming a guide for hunters there, thereby opened up a smuggling route to take marijuana across the BC-Idaho border. He makes a bunch of money and ends up just sort of chilling out and playing a lot of video games and comes up with some of his own ideas on how to make a better one. What he wants to do is to build a fully realized world that people can immerse themselves in. He brings in writers and he brings in geeks of geology and designers and architects to make it all realistic. Years go by and he turns that into a big, very successful video game company and becomes a tech magnate in Seattle. So what happens is that he's having a medical procedure and something goes wrong and he's just gone. And it turns out that when he was younger, he signed a will stating that his remains were to be preserved so that he could be kind of rebooted or brought back to life later. The twist that we see in this book, in Fall, is that after he dies, he has to build a world from scratch because there isn't one. He wakes up and he's in a field of chaos. It's a blank slate. He builds a world and he's the one guy who is most qualified to do that because of what he did during his lifetime. This book is kind of like more of a fable, right? So I'm not trying to go super deep into a hard science treatment of brains and neurons. I'm basically saying, let's assume, for the sake of telling a fun story, that all of this could happen, and let's just go from there. Well, in the case of Fall, it was always the intention that it would taper from the beginning part, which is straight up near future techno thriller, into something that was more like high fantasy crossed with the Bible and Paradise Lost and Satan and the apple and expulsion from paradise and the Greek myths. It's all kind of the background material. The jury's really still out on how it's going to be received. I mean, people who like fantasy also frequently like science fiction and vice versa. So I'm hoping people will enjoy a book that starts as one and tapers into the other. One of the fun things about Fall is it's an excuse to go back and revisit old myths and creation legends, and something that shows up in a lot of mythologies is this idea of creating something from chaos. Right, so that at the beginning there's this thing called chaos, which in a way seems like a weirdly modern high-tech idea because we have chaos theory, we have a mathematical definition now of what chaos means. But the ancient people seem to have their own idea of chaos. And then there's this recurring theme of the supreme deity or the first god or whatever who is able to transform chaos into something that's persistent and stable. And that's how the world gets created. And in a way, I think, you know, that's a creative activity that that everyone does, to take kind of random elements that just come to us from different directions all the time and assemble them into forms that are persistent and meaningful. So hopefully it's a thing that we can all kind of relate to, at some level.